If you apologize just because someone went quiet, it's because you're still a child who learned that silence is punishment. Someone you love goes quiet, and it lands like a punishment before a single word is spoken. Your stomach drops. You replay the last thing you said, hunting for the crime that earned this silence. You fill the empty air with apologies for things that were never your fault. And underneath all of it, a small voice insists the quiet means you're about to lose them. Here's what almost no one tells you. That isn't weakness, and it isn't drama. It's a language you learned long before you had words for it. If even one line of this already feels a little too familiar, go ahead and subscribe, because what we're about to name here is something most people carry every single day and never once get to see clearly. So today we're not here to talk about how to get over it, or how to finally toughen up. We're going back, quietly, carefully, into the small rooms where you first learned that being unheard could feel exactly like being punished. If silence hurts you as much as punishment, your childhood holds the answer. So let's start with what happens in your body, because that's where the truth lives. Someone goes quiet, and something in you goes on high alert. Your chest tightens. Your mind starts sprinting backward through the conversation, looking for the mistake. You didn't choose this reaction. It arrived faster than thought, like a reflex someone installed in you a long time ago. And that's the thing most people miss about the silent treatment. The panic it triggers isn't about now. It's an echo. Watch yourself the next time it happens. Notice how quickly you shift into managing the other person's mood instead of feeling your own. You soften your voice. You offer to fix something. You apologize before you even know what for. This is the fawn response. Not weakness, but a survival strategy so old you mistake it for personality. Somewhere along the way, you learned that the fastest route back to safety was to make yourself small, agreeable, useful. But nobody is born knowing that. To understand where it came from, we have to go back. Picture the child you once were, maybe 5, maybe 7, sitting in a room that just went cold. A parent has turned away. The talking has stopped. There's no yelling, no slammed door, nothing you could point to and call cruel. Just a wall of quiet where warmth used to be. And that child, too young to name it, understands one thing with total clarity. Something is wrong, and it must be me. Here's what that child couldn't know. For a small human, a parent's attention isn't a nicety. It's survival itself. Attachment theory tells us that a child reads connection as safety and disconnection as danger, real, bodily danger. So when the affection was suddenly withheld, the withdrawal didn't register as a bad mood. It registered as a threat to life. The quiet house became a place to survive. And a nervous system that learns to treat silence as emergency doesn't simply outgrow that lesson later. So sit with this for a second, because it changes everything. The anxiety you feel when someone pulls away isn't you being needy, or dramatic, or too much. It's a child's alarm system, still doing the job it was built for. Emotional withdrawal once meant your world was tilting, and your body decided, wisely, to never let that catch you off guard again. What looks like insecurity today was, back then, a brilliant piece of engineering. It kept you tuned to the people you couldn't afford to lose. But here's where it gets complicated in adulthood. That same alarm doesn't switch off just because you're grown and safe now. So a partner takes an hour to text back, and your whole day quietly collapses. A friend sounds a little flat, and you're already rehearsing the apology. This is hypervigilance, the exhausting, full-time job of scanning everyone around you for the first sign of withdrawal. You call it being sensitive or intuitive. Really, it's a lookout who was posted as a child and never once got relieved of duty. There's a famous experiment that shows just how early this begins. In 1975, a developmental psychologist named Edward Tronick ran what's now called the still face experiment. A mother plays warmly with her baby, then, on cue, goes blank, flat expression, no response. Within seconds, the baby strains to win her back, reaching, calling, then finally crumpling into distress. Nobody taught that infant to panic at a withdrawn face. It's wired in. You were once that baby, reaching for a face that had gone still. Now imagine that still face wasn't a 2-minute experiment, but a pattern. Imagine warmth that came and went depending on whether you'd been good, quiet, easy. That's how a child first meets conditional love, the sense that affection is a reward you earn, not a given you own. And once you believe love can be switched off, you spend your life trying to keep it on. You perform. You anticipate. You manage. The withheld affection of childhood becomes the blueprint for every relationship you'll build. Go back one more time. See that younger you at the dinner table, reading the room before reading the menu. Watching a parent's jaw, the set of their shoulders, the length of a pause. You became fluent in a language nobody admits exists, the grammar of a tightening mouth, the syntax of a sigh. This is what people miss when they say you're overthinking. You're not overthinking. You're translating. You learned to decode silence the way other kids learn to ride a bike, and you got very, very good at it. And that skill, that exhausting, brilliant skill, didn't stay in childhood. It followed you into every room you've walked into since. It's in the way you brace for conflict that hasn't happened yet. It's in the pause before you send a text, reading your own words for anything that might set someone off. You've been holding your breath for so long you forgot air is free. But there's a specific cost to living this way, one that hides in plain sight, and almost nobody sees it until it's named. The cost is this. Somewhere along the way, you disappeared. When you spend every interaction monitoring someone else's temperature, there's no attention left over for your own inner weather. Ask yourself, honestly, how do you actually feel right now? Most people shaped this way go blank at that question. Not because the feeling isn't there, but because feeling it was never safe. Your emotions got bottled up, filed away, marked deal with later. And later quietly became a decade. Emotional neglect doesn't just come from parents. Eventually, you learn to do it to yourself. Let me tell you about one person who lived this, because his story might sound uncomfortably like yours. He grew up in a house that was never loud. No hitting, no screaming. Just a mother who, whenever he disappointed her, would go silent for days. She'd move through the kitchen like he was made of glass she refused to look at. He was 6 the first time, and he learned fast that the way to end the freeze was to become perfect, helpful, invisible in all the right ways. He carried that straight into adulthood. He became the friend everyone relied on, the co-worker who never said no, the partner who apologized first every single time. On the outside, thriving. On the inside, exhausted, and quietly certain that the moment he stopped performing, everyone would go quiet and leave. He had no idea this was a pattern. He thought it was simply who he was, until a small comment from a therapist cracked the whole thing open. She asked him a question he'd never once considered. She asked, "When you were a child, who did you go to when you were sad?" And he opened his mouth to answer, and found nothing there. There was no one. He'd spent his whole life being the person others leaned on, because as a boy, there had been no lap to climb into, no door that stayed open. In that silence, he finally understood. The hyper-independence he'd worn like a badge wasn't strength. It was a scar. It was a little boy who'd decided, long ago, that needing people was too dangerous. Maybe that lands for you too. Because this is the quiet legacy of insecure attachment. You become so good at not needing anyone that you forget needing was ever allowed. You pride yourself on handling everything alone. You call it independence, maturity, being low maintenance. But underneath, there's a child who learned that reaching out led to a closed door and decided it was safer to stop reaching. That's not a flaw in your character. That's a wound wearing the costume of a personality trait. And here's the part that stings, so take a breath. The very strategies that protected you as a child are the ones sabotaging you as an adult. Back then, going quiet, agreeing, disappearing, that kept the peace, kept you safe. Now, those same defense mechanisms keep people at arm's length. You crave closeness and flinch from it in the same breath. You want to be truly seen, and you're terrified of it, because being seen once meant being judged. The lock that kept danger out is now keeping love out too. Go back one more time gently. Picture that child on the other side of the closed door, waiting for the silence to end. Not banging on it, not screaming, just waiting. Learning to be quiet enough, good enough, small enough to be let back in. That waiting shaped you. It taught you patience that curdled into people-pleasing. It taught you a stillness that looks like calm, but is really just bracing for conflict. And it taught you the loneliest lesson of all, that love is something you have to stay very still to keep. That stillness has a name in the body, and this is where it stops being just psychology and becomes physical. When a nervous system learns that connection can vanish without warning, it never fully stands down. You live in a low hum of nervous system dysregulation, always half ready for the floor to drop. It's why you can't relax even when things are good, especially when things are good. Part of you is quietly waiting for the warmth to be withdrawn again, the way it always was. Peace itself starts to feel suspicious. And that suspicion of peace runs deeper than most people realize. If your childhood taught you that calm was just the pause before the punishing silence, then calm never got to mean safety. It meant wait for it. So as an adult, when a relationship is steady and kind, you might feel a strange, itching unease, a pull toward drama, toward testing, toward pushing the person to see if they'll go cold like everyone before them. You're not self-sabotaging for no reason. You're running a test the frightened child in you never got to pass. Because here's what that child was really asking. Underneath every apology and every anxious glance at the door, will you still be here if I stop being perfect? Will the warmth survive my ordinary, disappointing human self? Nobody ever answered that question for you, so you've been asking it in 100 silent ways ever since. In every relationship, in every held breath, and until that question gets answered, no amount of reassurance from the outside ever quite reaches the place that's asking. But there is a way to finally answer it, and it's not where you'd expect. The way out starts somewhere surprising, not with the people who went silent, but with the child who's still waiting for them. This is the heart of inner child healing, and it's less mystical than it sounds. It simply means turning toward the part of you that got frozen at that closed door, and doing the one thing no one did back then, staying. Not fixing, not toughening up, just staying present with the feeling instead of managing it away. That child never needed you to be perfect. He needed you to not leave. So here's something concrete you can actually do. The next time a silence lands and your chest goes tight, don't rush to fix it. Pause, put a hand where the tension lives, and quietly name it. This is the old alarm, not today's truth. Then ask yourself the question that therapist asked. How old does this feeling feel? 9 times out of 10, the answer won't be your real age. That gap between the panic and the present is where your healing lives. You're learning to tell the past from the now. This is what reparenting yourself actually means. It's not a slogan, it's a practice of catching the moment you'd normally abandon your own feelings and choosing to stay instead. When you'd usually apologize, you pause and ask if you did anything wrong at all. When you'd usually go numb, you let yourself feel the smallest edge of it. You become, slowly, the steady adult that 6-year-old needed in the room. You give yourself the felt safety that was missing, the bone-deep sense that you won't leave, no matter what. Try this tonight, if you're willing. Write a short letter to the child you were, at the age this all started. Don't overthink it. Just tell him the one thing he most needed to hear back then, that it wasn't his fault the room went cold, that he was never the problem, that his need for warmth was never too much. It might feel silly for about 10 seconds. Then, for a lot of people, something in the chest lets go. That's the fawn response finally getting to rest. That's a very old breath being released. And notice what you're really doing when you write that letter. You're breaking a rule you were handed before you could speak. The rule that said your feelings were an inconvenience. that love had conditions, that silence was something you deserved. Every time you offer yourself the warmth you were denied, you're rewriting the blueprint. This is the actual mechanism of breaking the cycle. Not one dramatic breakthrough, but 1,000 small moments where you treat yourself the way someone should have treated that child. The pattern only survives in the dark. Now, a gentle warning, because this part trips people up. Reparenting yourself doesn't mean the old alarm goes silent forever. It will still fire. Someone will go quiet, and your stomach will still drop, at least for a while. The difference is what you do next. Instead of being swept into the 6-year-old's panic, you'll start to notice it as an old visitor, familiar, understandable, but no longer in charge. Self-compassion isn't the absence of the wound. It's the presence of a kinder voice standing beside it, one that finally sounds like it's on your side. Let's go back into a real moment, so this doesn't stay abstract. Someone doesn't answer your message, and the old story ignites. They're pulling away, you did something, it's happening again. Here's the reframe in real time. You place a hand on your chest and you say, silently, this is an old fear visiting a grown man who is safe. You let the wave rise and, this time, you let it pass without acting on it. You don't send the anxious triple text, you just breathe. And the wave, for the first time, doesn't get to run the show. That single choice, to feel the fear without obeying it, is more powerful than it looks. Each time you do it, you're teaching your nervous system a brand new lesson. That a silence can happen and you will survive it. That a person can go quiet and it doesn't mean the end. You're slowly building the felt safety no one built for you. And your body, which learned danger through repetition, can unlearn it the exact same way, one calm, unremarkable moment at a time. This is emotional healing at the level where it actually lives. The body. There's a quiet grief that comes with this work, and it deserves naming. As you heal, you start to see clearly what you didn't get, the attunement, the steady warmth, the parent who stayed present even when you were difficult, and there's a real sorrow in that. But here's the strange gift hidden inside it. Grieving what was missing is how you finally stop chasing it from people who can't give it either. You stop auditioning for the closed door. You turn around, and you find that the person you were waiting for all along was you. That turning around changes who you attract and what you tolerate. When you no longer confuse anxiety with love, the relationships built on withheld affection stop feeling like home. The person who keeps you guessing loses their strange magnetism. You start to want warmth that's steady, boring, reliable, the kind the frightened part of you once found suspicious. This is what it looks like when abandonment trauma loosens its grip. Not that you stop caring, but that you stop mistaking someone's ability to hurt you for proof that you love them. And that shift opens a door you didn't know was there. So let's name the door. On the other side of all this vigilance and performing is something you've never fully let yourself have. Rest. Not the collapse of exhaustion, but the deep rest of no longer standing guard. Imagine a version of you who hears a silence and doesn't flinch. Who lets a friend be quiet without writing a tragedy about it? Who can be loved on an ordinary Tuesday and simply believe it? That person isn't a fantasy. That person is who you were before the room went cold, still in there, waiting, patient as ever. And that's the quiet miracle of this work. You don't become someone new. You come home to someone who was there the whole time, underneath the apologizing and the bracing and the endless reading of other people's faces. The silence that once felt like punishment starts to feel like just silence. Empty air, holding no verdict about your worth. You stop translating it. You stop earning your way out of it. You just let it be quiet, and you let yourself be safe inside it. And from there, everything you thought was broken starts to look, instead, like proof of how hard you tried to be loved. So here's where I want to leave you, not with a task, but with a question. If you go back, all the way back, to that room that went cold, what was that child actually trying to say, in all his careful quiet? What did he need to hear that no one ever said out loud? Sit with that. Don't rush past it. Because the answer isn't in your parents, or in the people who went silent on you since. It was never their sentence to lift. It's yours. And that's a strange kind of freedom, isn't it? For years, you waited for them to break the silence, to finally explain, to finally apologize, to finally say the thing that would make it all make sense. But the period you were looking for at the end of that sentence was never in their hands. It was in yours the whole time. You don't need them to speak anymore. You've learned to hear the child underneath the quiet, and you've learned to answer him yourself. So let me ask you something, and I really do want to know. When you picture that younger version of you, the one who learned to read a room before he could read a book, what's the one word that describes him? Not what he became. Who he was underneath it all. Drop that single word in the comments. Just one. You'll be surprised how many people are about to recognize their own childhood in yours. There's a whole quiet crowd of us, and none of us knew. Thank you, genuinely, for staying to the end of this. Not everyone can sit with something this tender without looking away, and the fact that you did says something about the person you already are. If this gave you even one moment of "so that's why," then let it stay with you today. Notice the next silence that lands. Notice the old urge to fix it. And this time, maybe, just let it be quiet. Because the silence was never the verdict on you that you thought it was. You spent a lifetime apologizing into the quiet, trying to earn your way back into the warmth. But that silence was never yours to fill. And now, finally, you get to hand it back. If you ever want to sit in this quiet with people who get it, we do this here every week. No pressure, just a place to keep understanding yourself a little more. But handing that silence back doesn't undo what it built in you, and here's the part that still aches. A child who learns that warmth has to be earned doesn't just grow anxious, he grows into someone the world can't quite read. You became the adult who feels everything and shows almost nothing, who gets called distant, too much, hard to know, by people who have no idea what it cost you to stay this guarded. They see the walls. They never see the child who built them, brick by careful brick, just to survive a house that went cold. And so you carry this quiet ache of being misjudged by nearly everyone, when the truth of you was there the whole time, waiting to be understood. There's a reason no one sees the real you. It started earlier than you think,